The research facility on Vorik 4 was a fortress of knowledge, a place where the greatest minds of the galactic concordance dissected the universe's mysteries. Today, however, their focus was on something infinitely smaller, yet far more dangerous: a single human soldier. The observation deck overlooked a vast combat arena, an artificial battleground of shifting terrain, simulated weather conditions, and lethal combat drones. Rows of high-ranking alien officials and scientists from dozens of species filled the chamber, all here for a singular purpose: to understand how human reflexes functioned. The Concordance had long studied war. Their battle doctrines were formulated through millennia of carefully controlled engagements. Every move calculated, every strike premeditated. But humans didn't fight that way. They reacted. Too fast. Too unpredictably. Too lethally. Today that mystery would be solved. The subject, Lieutenant Daniel Voss. Strapped into his sleek exo-reinforced combat suit, Lieutenant Daniel Voss cracked his neck as he stood in the empty arena, waiting for the test to begin. He'd been given only one instruction: survive. Simple enough. Voss had seen the aliens whispering behind the glass. He'd seen their doubtful looks. They still thought of humans as anomalies, biological glitches in the refined art of war. They thought today would expose his kind as lucky primitives. They had no idea. The test begins. A shrill klaxon sounded. The ground shifted beneath Voss's feet. The floor morphed into uneven rock formations, deep ravines appearing where smooth metal had been moments before. Simulated winds howled. A six-limbed combat drone lunged from the shadows, plasma blades igniting. Voss didn't think. He moved. His body snapped sideways, his mind processing vectors, angles, and the drone's projected trajectory in an instant. The alien observers barely saw it happen. One moment Voss was standing still. The next he was behind the drone, burying his knife through its armored throat joint. A flick of his wrist. A precise twist. The machine convulsed, then collapsed. Time elapsed? 0.72 seconds. The alien researchers muttered to each other, their tentacles and mandibles twitching nervously. That reaction speed was impossible. No creature should be able to process movement, adapt, and execute a counter in under a second. Yet the human had done it instinctively. Escalation. A swarm of drones emerged next. 30. 50. They darted around the arena, firing plasma bolts, launching micromissiles. Voss exploded into motion. His brain disconnected from hesitation, from calculation. No thought. Only action. He twisted, dodging between streaks of plasma before they were even fired. The aliens watching gasped. Voss wasn't dodging reactively. He was dodging before the shots were fired. The Concordance had never seen anything like this. Their own warriors relied on pattern recognition, strategic evasion. But this was primal. Voss's knife flashed. His pistol barked. Bodies dropped. The swarm was destroyed in under a minute. Fear in the observation deck. This is not possible, one of the researchers muttered. The others remained silent. Because they knew. It wasn't just speed. It wasn't just precision. It was something deeper. Something terrifying. Something uniquely human. For the first time, the Concordance realized. Humans weren't just anomalies. They were monsters hidden in the skin of diplomats and explorers. And the galaxy had just made the mistake of provoking them. The observation deck was silent. The only sound was the crackling remains of the last combat drone still twitching on the arena floor. Lieutenant Daniel Voss exhaled slowly, rolling his shoulders. He wasn't even breathing hard. But the aliens watching him? They were shaken. The lead researcher, a Gorvexian strategist named Alzora, gripped the railing, his reptilian eyes darting to his subordinates. He's not predicting their movements. He's moving before they move. The words sent a ripple of unease through the room. That wasn't possible. Even the most advanced AI reacted to input. That was the foundation of combat. Action and reaction. Yet this human, he was breaking that fundamental rule. The next phase, a living opponent. The test was supposed to be a controlled experiment. But Alzora needed to know more. Send in Kazet. A low murmur spread through the room. Kazet. The most feared close-quarters warrior in the Concordance. A Tarzanari apex predator, 7 feet of muscle, claws, and death. He's not ready for that. One of the researchers objected. Alzora's voice was cold. No. But we need to know what we're dealing with. Predator versus prey, or something else. The arena doors slammed open. A towering shadow emerged. Kazet. His razor-edged exoskeleton gleamed under the artificial lights. His clawed hands flexed. His mandibles clicked in a silent promise of violence. He had killed over 100 beings in the pits of Korzal. His species was designed to hunt, to tear through flesh, to feel the life drain from their prey. And right now, his eyes locked onto Voss like a starving beast. The human stood still, expression unreadable. Cosette's mandibles curled into a grin. He had studied humans before. They hesitated. They thought too much. They relied on tools. But Cosette? He was a natural-born killer. The fight begins. Cosette lunged. His forearms snapped forward, claws aimed for Voss's throat. But Voss wasn't there. The moment Cosette attacked, Voss's body twisted sideways, before Cosette had even fully moved. A 0.4-second preemptive dodge. The alien audience gasped. Cosette barely had time to react before Voss was behind him. A knife flashed. Not to kill, but to carve a deep, deliberate slash across Cosette's side. A warning. Cosette roared, spinning, swiping with inhuman speed. Voss ducked before the attack even started. Not after. Not during. Before. That was when fear crept into Cosette's primal mind. He's reading me. No. He's reacting before I act. The realization froze him for a fraction of a second. And in that moment, Voss struck. His knee slammed into Cosette's sternum, sending the larger alien crashing to his knees. For the first time in his life, Cosette felt something alien to his species. He felt preyed upon. The Concordance's nightmare. In the observation deck, Alzora couldn't look away. Voss wasn't just faster than Cosette. He wasn't just smarter. He was something worse. The human's brain was wired differently. The Tarzanari, the best warriors in the galaxy, operated on the natural rhythm of combat, stimulus and response. Humans had no such rhythm. They didn't wait for cues. They didn't hesitate for a pattern to emerge. They acted in a way no other species could understand. Alzora's claws tightened on the railing. Shut it down. Now. The final strike. In the arena, Cosette charged one last time. A final attempt to reclaim dominance. A mistake. Voss moved in a blur, a perfect counterstrike, executed before Cosette had even finished his attack. The flat of Voss's blade slammed against the Tarzanari's throat. Cosette collapsed. Silence. Aftermath. The test chamber doors hissed open as guards rushed in, separating the two fighters. Voss didn't resist. He simply stood there, calm as ever, looking down at Cosette's stunned expression. For the first time, the warrior didn't see a fragile human. He saw something unnatural. Something that shouldn't exist. Alzora's final thought. Back in the observation deck, Alzora's claws trembled. He had spent decades studying war. But now he understood the horrifying truth. Humans weren't anomalies. They were biological weapons wearing flesh. And the galaxy wasn't ready for them. The silence in the observation deck was thick with unspoken terror. Cosette, the apex warrior of the Tarzanari, lay on the floor of the combat arena, struggling to breathe. His exoskeletal armor was cracked. His pride was shattered. And the human? Lieutenant Daniel Voss simply stood there, unbothered. Alzora had seen enough. He snapped his claws, barking orders. End the experiment. Get Cosette medical attention. But the other researchers weren't listening. They were staring at the monitors. The data coming from Voss's neural readings was impossible. What the scanners revealed. Sir, one of the researchers whispered, voice trembling. You need to see this. Alzora turned, his pupils narrowing as he saw the live brain activity of the human. It wasn't normal. It wasn't even close to normal. Instead of responding to external stimuli like every other known species, Voss's brain was operating in a completely different sequence. It wasn't reacting. It was pre-reacting. A full 0.5 seconds before an event occurred. Alzora felt his throat go dry. That's not possible. No species was capable of predicting the future. Yet here in front of him was evidence to the contrary. A species built for war. One of the scientists, a Zelvar with pale blue skin, shook her head in disbelief. I've studied humans before. Their species evolved under extreme pressure. Constant threats from predators, warring tribes, environmental disasters. She gulped. Their survival didn't just depend on reacting. It depended on being faster than what should be possible. Alzora's claws twitched. Are you telling me that humans evolved precognition? The Zelvar hesitated. Not exactly. She pulled up another screen, zooming in on the microsecond bursts of brain activity happening within Voss's frontal lobe. They don't see the future. They just act before it happens. Alzora's mind reeled. A species that didn't wait for danger. A species that didn't hesitate. It explained everything. Why humans survived against superior predators. Why they were so dangerous in war. Why Cosette, one of the deadliest creatures in the galaxy, never stood a chance. The problem just got worse. A sudden blaring alarm interrupted Alzora's thoughts. Red alert. The arena doors slammed open as security forces stormed in, weapons drawn. Voss tensed, his sharp eyes scanning the guards in less than a second. He had fought enough battles to recognize a threat. Alzora held up a clawed hand, stopping his troops. Stand down. The soldiers hesitated. Voss didn't move. But Alzora could feel it. That human reflex was already calculating. Already preparing for the moment he'd need to strike. The Gorvexian commander's voice was firm. He's not our enemy. Not yet. An unnatural weapon. The truth was obvious now. Humans weren't normal. Their reflexes weren't just fast. They weren't just deadly. They were unnatural. A biological impossibility. Alzora had always believed war was a game of strategy and reaction. Attack and counterattack. But humans? They weren't playing that game. They were playing something else entirely. Something the galaxy had never prepared for. And that terrified him. Voss breaks the silence. Finally, the human spoke. His voice was calm. Controlled. But Alzora could sense the underlying warning. I assume you've seen enough? The commander hesitated, then nodded. Yes, they had seen enough. More than enough. And it changed everything. The coming storm. Alzora took a deep breath. If even a single fleet commander learned what humans were truly capable of, the galaxy would never allow their species to survive. It was too dangerous. Too unpredictable. Wrong. A decision had to be made. He turned to Voss, his voice grim. We need to talk. Alzora had spent decades studying war. He had dissected battle strategies from 1,000 different species, analyzed every known combat doctrine, and personally led over 100 campaigns. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared him for this. The human wasn't just dangerous. He was impossible. The unnatural edge. Voss still stood in the center of the arena, breathing evenly. Unarmed. But untouched. Cosette, one of the deadliest warriors in the known galaxy, had thrown everything at him. And it didn't matter. Because Voss had already moved before the attack happened. He hadn't reacted. He had preacted. The lab scans confirmed it. His brain activity surged before the threat even existed. It wasn't magic. It wasn't technology. It was just human evolution. Alzora turned back to the researchers, his voice dangerously quiet. What do we do with this? The question hung in the air. Because the answer could decide the fate of the entire galaxy. A dangerous choice. The Zelvar scientist hesitated. Sir, if the other factions learn about this. She didn't need to finish. The implications were obvious. If the Galactic Council discovered that humans had reflexes beyond known physics, they would never be allowed to exist. Voss crossed his arms. Let me guess. You're thinking about wiping us out? Alzora didn't deny it. It was the logical choice. But something held him back. Something wrong. Humanity's real strength. The commander watched Voss carefully. Humans were fast. Faster than they should be. But it wasn't just their speed that made them dangerous. It was their adaptability. Their sheer refusal to lose. A species that didn't just react, but prepared for threats before they happened? What happens when you push them into a corner? A terrifying thought formed in Alzora's mind. What if extermination wasn't an option? What if humans didn't go extinct, but instead, evolved even further? The only way forward. A decision had to be made. Alzora exhaled sharply. Then he made the call. We keep this secret. The researchers snapped their heads toward him in shock. Sir? You heard me. His voice was firm. If the Council learns what humans are truly capable of, it will start a war we can't control. The Zelvar scientist swallowed. And if humans turn against us later? Alzora looked at Voss. The human's expression was unreadable. But the commander had studied war for too long to miss the truth. Voss already knew what was at stake. And yet he hadn't attacked. Alzora narrowed his gaze. Maybe the real problem wasn't human reflexes. Maybe it was how the galaxy would react to them. The human speaks. Voss tilted his head. So what now? Alzora let out a low hum. Now. We pretend this never happened. Voss studied him carefully. Then after a long silence he nodded. Smart choice. For the first time, Alzora wasn't sure who was truly making the decisions here. The silent agreement. The test results were deleted. The combat logs were erased. Cosette was given a false report to save his honor. And Lieutenant Voss? He left the station as if nothing had happened. As if he hadn't just changed the fate of the entire galaxy. But Alzora knew the truth. Somewhere out there the humans were preparing. And the day they decided to stop hiding their real abilities, the universe would never be the same. Or just the beginning. Subscribe now, because when humanity finally reveals its true power, the galaxy won't be ready.